So when I'm with young people, I like to share my background because I want them to know that it's not their environment that they grew up in that determines their destiny and their career and their life. Because when I was younger, I slept in a cardboard box as a baby. It was because my dad had met my mom during the Korean War. My dad was African American, and he met my mom in Korea. And I had 5 siblings, so I was the youngest of 6 kids, and we lived in a 2-bedroom trailer in a small town in Kansas. And because there weren't enough beds, my mom said she would put me in a box to sleep at night as a baby. And so one of the things I learned growing up from a low-income family was that money wasn't everything. I had parents that loved me the best they could. I had brothers and sisters to play with, and we all had a natural curiosity. We would go to the library and find books on science and things like that, and we would try to build things. We'd go exploring close to the railroad tracks where we were at. And so even though being from a low-income family was an obstacle, I realized there were a lot of things that I could create with my imagination and creativity that didn't rely on money. Another big challenge that I had growing up had to do with my mom. So my mom, she made it through maybe the equivalent of 3rd grade during her childhood. I think it was when Japan had occupied Korea. So they weren't even allowed to speak Korean. She had to speak Japanese. And her parents died when she was young. And a lot of what happened to her as a child, I think, resulted in some problems she had later in life. And so she was diagnosed as having schizophrenia. From my brothers and sisters, they told me that the way schizophrenia was diagnosed and treated was a lot different. They remember my mom having to do shock treatments, which now we know that's not what you do to treat that disease. It took me a while before I was comfortable sharing about my mom's mental illness, but I like to share that too because I want kids to know, your parents, they may have problems, they may have issues, but that doesn't mean that you can't overcome them. And something I share also that's very near to me about how I overcome my challenges was my faith in God. So there was a church that taught us as kids about the Bible and Jesus, and my mom was from a Buddhist background. My dad didn't go to church, but those are things that I embraced in my faith that also helped me to overcome challenges that I face throughout my life. The city I grew up in, Kansas, was called Junction City, Kansas. It was adjacent to Fort Riley, Kansas, and not too far from Manhattan, Kansas, where Kansas State University is. But it was known, especially in the mid-50s, I believe, and on, for its drugs, prostitution, and crime. It was only about 17,000 people, but it was the home of this big army base from people coming from all over the world. And it was so infamous that a movie was made out of it. It was called 9th Street. It starred Isaac Hayes and Martin Sheen. And so across the street they sold drugs. On the other side of our house, a lot of the kids ended up going to prison. On another side, one of the sons on military payday would dress up like a woman and go hang out with the prostitutes. And prostitutes used to always be on 9th Street until they tore that down and they all moved onto our main street. So that was also another challenge of living in that kind of environment. That was an obstacle that I had to overcome. And again, I like to tell kids it doesn't matter as long as you have some guidelines in your life to keep you from falling into those things.